So, Facebook Live. Let me get my Instagram going here. What's up, everybody? Derek Jonhson here. Rattletrap 1776. What's up, 1776 Nation? What's up, Derek Jonhson Country? What's up, Rattletrap 1776 Nation? So, got all three going here. So, just thought I'd come live tonight because we've had a lot of fun this week. A lot of stuff being unveiled to people. A lot of things. It's kind of funny because, I used to have a shirt that said conspiracy realist, and everything that we were called conspiracy theorists for. It's all unveiled now. It's one thing when you're a civilian. There's nothing wrong with being a civilian, obviously. But it's another thing when you're a veteran. And it's another thing, even more so, a triple effect, is when you're a veteran who's been called back to a certain capacity. And then you have people out there who go, how can this guy know what he knows? Well, somebody's got to. Might as well be me. But it's just so humorous, and I've been talking to a couple friends this week in another kind of spectrum. It's humorous from another standpoint. So, and as we all know, if you've lived a little life, you know things always come out in the end. But I'm going to paint a little picture tonight because we're going to talk about more intricate things that happened this week, more than the broad picture. But I'm used to painting the broad picture because you kind of have to in another kind of manner. But at the same time, tonight I'm going to get a little bit more intricately. But there's no way President Trump did this as a civilian, regular president whatsoever. And it's another thing to see it weekly. Well, let's do it this way. Daily, weekly, monthly, and now yearly for myself. It's one thing to sit and I look at messages all the time. We try to get as many as we can. But when you're looking at messages and you're looking at comments, it's kind of humorous at this point for me because I'm like, well, my job's not to persuade you or to coerce you. My role in the oath of any military personnel, for that matter, to the actual terminology of the oath, but also terminology of our foundation, is not to persuade you or coerce you. It's to guide you to the answers. All right. This is what President Trump's working with. And you don't have to like it. You don't have to love it. You still don't have to like him. You don't have to like me. But this is what he's working with. All right. And if you truly care about this nation and you truly want to see things cleaned out, then you should know what I know. All right. Now, we've had people say stuff like, why do you think you're the center of attention? Well, I'm not the center of attention. But when intellectual property is stolen, all right, that's a completely different spectrum. All right. Everything that I talk about are public laws and orders, but I have a unique thing that became a thing called the documents first, which are now 4.5 years old. All right. So everything that you see influencers out there doing now, the clickbait material, the drama, the propaganda, they're just misleading people. Every person walking, breathing right now, especially if you're an American, can know exactly what I know. The documents have been out, the documents.info, they're still there. Now, some links don't work because, like President Trump said, MSDNC and all these other liberal organizations, what do? They deleted some stuff. All right. And then you have my books. I'm going to write something down real quick, remind myself from something. You will know the pen ain't working. I write so much. So then you have these books right here. These are straight off the top of the dome. I wrote these straight from my brain. All right. I drew a little outline. But these are #1 bestsellers. It's part 1, part 2. All right. See the difference in them. This gets your feet wet. this gets you more into special operations. All right, and how they pulled it off lawfully. All right, but the Midnight Rider arrives again. This one shows you your Bill of Rights, your Articles of Confederation, the Constitution, your 3 branches of government. It gets you back into that. All right, the other one does a deep dive into special operations, more militarily. That way you can see how President Trump and the generals pulled this off lawfully. It's very important. This whole thing's been done lawfully. So when I see people struggling, it's my passion to want to help people go, hey, you don't have to be following drama. You don't have to be following propaganda. You don't have to be following clickbait information. You don't need that. As long as I'm here, and I'm here, God put me here for that reason. I show you all the receipts of what President Trump's working with on the military law side and the federal law side, in which most people have never even heard of military law. They don't even know anything about military law, don't know anything about military regulations, don't know anything about military publications, which is very, very important. That's what sets this whole thing differently. And there was a line drawn in the sand, and I was just talking about this earlier today with someone. I said it's very, very important to be able to see the difference in every single one of us right now. I don't mind telling my age anymore. Used to, you wanted to keep your age quiet in country music. Don't care anymore. I'm 42 years old. All right. So, in my lifetime, if I've seen it, you've seen it. But especially if you're 42 and above, or 40 and above, we'll make 40 the pinnacle. But every single one of us has lived in the era of a president gets in, 4 years, they spend the first 2 years unraveling what the last president did. And then they spend the next 2 years doing certain things, and they just did enough to get by. They just tankered enough to get by. All right? They do a little bit here to appease this group here, and when this group over here starts getting restless, then they leave this group over here and they go to this group. And they just did that. They had their own checks and balances. Their own. For themselves. Not for we the people. No matter what you believe. It was never for us. And it was ass backwards. Because we the people are the government. That's what the Declaration of Independence is so important for. We the people are the government. That's our role and duty to keep them in check. They represent us. So when people say, why did it look like this? And if President Trump never left, why would he crash the economy? Or people are dying and all. You look just as atrocious. When were people not dying before 2016? Please enlighten me that. When were people not struggling? When was the economy perfect? When did we have a balanced budget? When did we have surplus? When you can answer that in the positive, not the red, and you're never going to be able to. Because every president before, 4 years, first 2 years, unraveled. Next 2 years, if they even got a second term, then same thing. And they'd add on to it. And then another president would get in and unravel. That is not cohesive for we the people. But people couldn't combat that because people forgot the very simple core basics of being an American. Knowing your 3 branches of government, knowing who writes the law, who enforces the law, and who interprets the law. So a line was drawn in the sand, November the 8th, 2016. That was the visual of the election. Now you can use the escalator. That's when it was game over, when President Trump rolled down the escalator. But I'm talking lawfully and strategically, not just optically. These components are what separates the whole operation and makes 45-47 that strategic and special operation. And if everybody would know that, then you would know that everything happening right now is strategic and been planned out. It's pre-planned. So nothing's new. There's not a new podcaster that's going to pop up and have something that you don't know. Everything you need to know are in President Trump's laws and orders that have been invoked. The laws have been on paper. The invocations have not. All right. That's why it's very key. So when you know that foundation and you learn the terminology, you learn the glossary, you learn the index, only then will you be able to see all the things that's taking place. Because I shouldn't have any single person on my inbox and on my comment box that's saying, when are we going to see something? If you ain't seen something by now, this ain't for you, boo-boo. You need to pick up crocheting, knitting, golfing, hiking, traveling, walking, something. Because this ain't for you. All right, we got everything under control. Everything's good. It's all been pre-planned. But if we were in any kind of turmoil or whatever term you want to use for it, if the deep state were still existing, like 99% of these podcasters would make you believe, guess who would have knocks on their door? Me. I'm the one who's shown every single law and order, every single receipt in droves of information. If there were still deep state out there, live in real time, old boy right here, old veteran, would have people on my doorstep. And even in a good kind of way, they could say, hey, you way ahead of the step here. You're way ahead of everything. That special operations is 2 and 3, 4, 5 years. You pipe it down a little bit. Let them catch up. You hear other podcasters out there. You've heard them. I'm not going to name them tonight because all it does is give them credibility from the standpoint of out of my mouth. All right, but you've heard them say the FBI's been at their door. They've been heckled by the FBI. All their accounts have been frozen. Oh, yeah. Well, who else froze accounts? President Donald John Trump with Executive Order 13959 with a national emergency, November the 12th, 2020. All right, funding the Chinese Communist military. They don't just freeze accounts just because you're saying something out of your freedom of expression. Go ahead and tell you right now. Because I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, the FBI and all them, they got bigger fish to fry enough on that level from the past. They wouldn't have to get down to some little bitty podcaster who thinks their poo-poo don't stink. All right? Nah, it don't work like that. All right? It just don't. And it's time every American starts applying knowledge. Knowledge is not power. It's the application of knowledge that's power. So, I've seen a lot of comments and a lot of messages. And it's time you get back to the basics again. Make reading great again. Make America read again. Reading is the pinnacle. You got to read first before you can comprehend. And every bit of this operation is in literature. It has to be because of proclamations and timestamps, and it's all back here, meaning it's in history already. And when it's proclamated in history and it's bipartisan, then no one over here can say anything about it, especially the more they unveil what they're going to unveil to everybody. So let's talk about the big nugget first. Let's go ahead and let's just dive right on into the biggie. All right, the biggie this week is you've been seeing about Obama linked to Russiagate. All right, now that ain't the biggie. That's not the biggie at all. That's the tip of the iceberg of disclosure rolling into what's going to roll into, and we're going to talk about that again tonight if they don't freeze my accounts. Because I'm about to go into the big words that got me banned about 5 or 10 minutes on Truth Social a month ago. Because I'm ahead of the game and I have all those receipts for you. All right, so let's hope that nothing happens. All right, but this immunity thing and Obama, that's what we're going to talk about right now. So, one, if you think all this is happening in real time, again, you need to catch up. Obama has not posted on his X account since July the 10th, so 17 days. All right. If you hate somebody, now hate's a strong word. I don't like using hate. I don't hate anybody. I don't hate anything. I dislike certain people and I dislike certain things. is a proper term, but if you hated somebody, or thought you hated them, or despised them, or just absolutely loathed someone, but especially that you've seen visual evidence of how much they hate President Donald John Trump, and they hate Donald Trump even before he was a visual wartime president. If you hated somebody, and you felt like your legacy was about to be destroyed, or tarnished, or just drugged through the mud, but at this kind of scale, we're talking about, this ain't just, some photo popped up at your college years ago and you're with another female when you were supposed to be married or something like that. No, this ain't that. We're talking about murder. Murder, which I'm about to read again in a minute. We're talking links to murder that have solid proof, and world has seen visual evidence of this, and some don't realize that they've seen it. So if you thought that your whole legacy was about to be drugged through the mud and tarnished but really destroyed, you'd be defending yourself. You got to apply it this way. Obama has 130.3 million followers on X alone. That's 37.5% of the current population right now. That's a pretty good persuasion in another manner. If he was free to roam, if he was free to travel anywhere, if he was free to just pick up his phone, just like this simple, my extra phone here, my Gitmo phone, if it was that simple, just to pick up the phone and go to your account like I do daily, posting, why hasn't he? Comey hasn't posted on his X since June the 10th and only made 2 posts in the whole month of June alone. Nothing to do with President Trump or anything like that. Michelle, Big Mike, as some like to call her, right? Big Michelle ain't posted since June the 19th. Does that sound like somebody who's free to roam, free to defend their name, free to defend their man? You remember how Michelle, oh, that's my man. No, my man. Remember that? Well, ain't she defending her man? Why aren't they on their social media where they have millions and millions of followers? We know, patriots know, veterans know, and patriots know that know. We know where they are. We know what happened. But think of the average person out there who cannot see that. James Comey, you can't even comment on his X. He has to be following your account on there for you to be able to even comment. So now you see a video floating around of Comey, and where is it? It's on what? Mainstream media, right? Only. Not on his account. And you can see his eyes going across the screen like windshield wipers, reading a script. And we're going to show you what that is for the people that may be new. We're going to show you exactly what that is. It's all under wartime code, baby. It's all scripted. Everything. All right, so the line was drawn in the sand. November the 8th, 2016. January the 20th, 2017. And all these laws and orders got invoked. Your continuity of government. And as long as the law shows we're in a continuity of government, we're in a continuity of government. Because you cannot revoke something that wasn't already what? Invoked. You wouldn't need a revocation if it wasn't invoked. So, Executive Order 13961, which is actually titled the Federal Mission Resilience Strategy, was signed December the 7th, 2020. It was partially revoked on January the 19th, 2025. So why would quote-unquote Joe Biden wait until the very last 24-hour day of a presidency to revoke a continuity of government? Partially revoke. If he was president, he would have had every power that every other president would have had. And if President Donald John Trump was a threat to democracy, which we're not a democracy, but if he's a threat, And if he's a dictator and violating the Constitution, wouldn't you want to abolish every single thing that President Donald John Trump did? Especially wartime orders? I mean, that's common sense. If you hate somebody, you would do everything you could lawfully to prevent them from getting back into a seat. Or, if you thought you were going to lose on November the 5th, 2024, you would still have revoked everything and terminate every single thing that you could lawfully revoke and lawfully terminate in order to let that person get back in the driver's seat and go, holy crap, I got to go back and do all this stuff over again. Instead, you didn't see that January the 2025. You saw what you thought was a real administration. It wasn't. It was a puppet government by law, which is a military tactic. Hand back over to President Donald John Trump all these executive orders with national emergencies and all these other wartime orders that were not terminated. So you got to know that first. The problem that people have is they want justice so much that they're not willing to see what we got to do to maintain and sustain the flip side of this. They still want somebody else to do it. And that's called lazy. That's not worthy of being called an American. Just wanting justice. But you're not wanting to see what leads to it. You're not wanting to see what men and women have put their life on the line for all these years, but especially this strategic plan put into place. That's called lazy. And you don't deserve justice. You don't deserve to see it. And you better be glad that President Trump is president. Because if I was, I wouldn't be acting like this. I would be called a dictator. You would be deported for making dumb comments. You'd be put in a spot where you'd have to earn your keep, as the saying is. All right, you would be deported. And if you were a liberal, every time you went to the gas station, it would register. It would say, registered Democrat, leans very left, $9.99 a gallon. You'd get the highest cost gas has ever been in the state of California, which I believe that's where that's been the most. You would pull up to the pump. You'd be in the grocery store. You'd look over at a Republican. It goes, registered Republican, very, very conservative, ultra President Trump supporter. Gallon of milk, $2. Or eggs, carton of eggs, $2.99. And then yours, registered Democrat, leans very left, would go $12.99. That's what you would get with Derek Jonhson as president. So you better be glad that Donald John Trump is your commander-in-chief, because that's what you'd get with me. And people who kept making dumb comments and hateful comments, you'd have a punishment too. You'd have community service of reading and studying and having to pass a test. That's what I would do. I just came up with that just then. You would have community service, mandatory community service, where you would read, study, comprehend, and the way you prove that is taking a test. Now, you may walk on out there and never repeat that material, but it would be branded in those brains by the time you got done with community service with Derek Jonhson. So, people can't appreciate what's going on because they don't want to read and study and put in the time of what's going on. Because President Trump has to say certain things where it don't look like he's a dictator. So like on his one of his interviews, he was asked about immunity with Obama and said that, well, Obama should thank me because the immunity ruling will actually help him. No, it does not. Now, that ain't me turning on President Trump. That is not me defying President Trump. That's President Trump setting aside that it's not going to be him that's going to what's going to take place to Obama in the future. Because I can assure you right now that immunity does not exempt a president from murder and treason. And if you want to believe President Trump over law, then you're missing the point of the whole operation, because President Trump is going by the law, but he has to separate himself from looking like he is the dictator over the law versus the law. It's all terminology. You got to listen. And that's where Americans are struggling, is because they don't want to listen and they don't want to comprehend. You don't want to hear the difference. And hearing the difference requires listening to the difference. There's a huge difference in listening and hearing. But there's already a Supreme Court docket case that got me banned and got back up, but because I've deep dived it a little too far, and we're going to see if I get to stay on tonight, we'll see, but immunity. So you'll hear stuff like Congress. You'll hear, they made Bernie Sanders recently say something. They made Jasmine Crockett say something recently. They made them say, oh, it's Congress's job to declare the war. Thank you for putting that on record. People like me already know that. But they put that on record even more for what? Because of the disclosure that's coming. All right? When you go over to the War Powers Act, Title 50, Chapter 33, guess who doesn't have an entry in there? Obama. See where we're going here? So if you're going to scream, if you want to be the one who screams the loudest, right, like liberals do, they scream loud. They bark big. They might want to know what's in law. And here's Congress people. Now, they're under a continuity of government. That's the one thing people struggle with still. Any congressman or woman, they're still in a continuity of government. As long as Executive Order 13961 is partially invoked, we are still in a continuity of government. And a continuity of government is, it's kind of like this, but a continuity of government here, and this Presidential Emergency Action Document accompanies it. This is still kind of the umbrella, but it accompanies that. Established by President Eisenhower, who was also a 5-star general. We've only had 8 5-stars, admirals and generals, since the Civil War. 5 stars are rare rank. Rare. So you got to know the origin of them. Now, I'm going to deviate. I'm going to do what President Trump calls the weave. I'm going to deviate a little bit, but I'm going to weave it back together. Going back to President Eisenhower and that generation, those generations were the ones warning everybody what was coming, and they didn't like where everything was going. President Eisenhower was the one who had the famous military-industrial complex speech, January the 17th, 1961, where he said he didn't like where our military was going, and medical field. He even brought up medical briefly. He didn't deep dive it, but he just said a surface level. He didn't like where it was going because of this, money. That's why we have so many veterans, not a lot. I mean, it depends. I don't know the number. I don't know if there is any data out there about that. But we have a lot of veterans who don't know laws and orders. The very laws and orders they served under military laws, military orders, military regulations, military publications, layers of publication. That's why we have so many veterans that don't know what's going on, because they went in for the wrong motivation. Now, they can still be a good person, but somebody has to call a spade a spade. Not every veteran knows what's going on because they don't even know the laws and orders they served under. That's not me trashing veterans. They're still mainly good people. But you could be a full bird colonel, you could be a lieutenant colonel, you could be a captain, you could be a sergeant major, you could be a pretty high-ranking veteran, but if you don't know the current laws and orders and the layers that are invoked right now that outline a strategic operation, then you'd have to also know that a puppet government, government in exile, those are strategic operations, but they're special operations. They're not something you want to do all the time, no. But they're special and strategic. And there's a blueprint for that. Well, that blueprint is how Eisenhower established, prescribed. Now, from setback, you could say from before him, because Congress put term limits on the president, but not themselves in 51. You could say there, but there's nowhere to really say that you could start. You could use 1871, the Organic Acts, but then you could flip up and say, well, Roosevelt and them, they were doing some things good and some things whatever. You could go however you want to spin it. We were still under a corporation, because that started. You can look that up. United States Corporation, 28 U.S. Code, Section 3002. Go look it up. United States Federal Corporation. That's in our codifications under Title 28. All right, it tells you straight up the United States is a federal corporation. So you can start with any date you want, but I always start with 73 because that's when they changed the War Powers Act. And they put limitations on the president to use the military, the National Guard. Had to declare a national emergency. Well, a lot of presidents declared a lot of national emergencies, starting with the Iranian national emergency in 1979. That executive order is 46 years old and still active. Now, President Trump just hammered Iran, and you're going to see a revocation of that somewhere in the future, but it's still active until then. But President Trump's the first to show action with Iran. What were they doing from 1979 to 2016 with Iran? Why is there an executive order with a national emergency running for 37 years? Make that make sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. Whatsoever. So see, when you know the laws and then you know where Congress kind of really went deeper and deeper with their bullcrap games, then it'll make more sense where there's a line in the sand. And they didn't do the law as prescribed by the law. They didn't enforce the law as prescribed by the law. That's why that word prescribe, prescription, is so key. What Congress did from those years, especially the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and 2000s, what they were doing was their prescription. What they wanted. What they were doing with their monetary wars, their fiat wars. Not what was good for we the people. But we the people, not me, not some of you patriots, but most Americans forgot what? They forgot what we the people means. And that's why 68% of America can't even name the three branches of government. Just name the three branches of government. If someone came up to people on the street and said, hey, I'm going to build you a house if you can name the three branches of government. Just think about that. Just think if there was someone out there that says, you know what, I'm going to build you a house if you can name the three branches of government. Think about something that's life-changing. And you say, name the three branches of government. 68% of America can't even just name them. Don't even get to who writes the law, who interprets the law, who enforces the law. Let's just name them. Let's just start with the names of the three branches of government. 68% of America can't do it. I don't know whether to laugh or to hide my face. Every time I say that and repeat myself, I'm like, and they want to argue with me? And they want to debate me? You don't want to debate me. You need to start a little bit lower down here. Way lower. All right. So, when you hear people say that President Trump's a threat to democracy, look at that. How's he a threat to democracy? We're not even a democracy. Oh, he's a threat to democracy, all right, because it was their democracy. That's what they call their government, all right? They went against the principles of our foundation. They went against the literature of our founders. James Madison, titled the Father of the Constitution. James Madison now, the Father of the Constitution. Making people think I froze for a moment. Let that ring a bell. James Madison, the Father of the Constitution. In Federalist Papers, number 10 and number 14, which the Federalist Papers came between the time that they wrote the Constitution, and he was the main author, and then the enactment of the Constitution, which was March the 4th, 1789. So 1787, September 1787 to March the 4th, 1789. In the middle, there were the things called the Federalist Papers, written by James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. Just three. 85 Federalist Papers. from September 1787. So then August, so you had October. The next, it wasn't even a month later, if you do your math. But September 1787, Constitution. October 1787 started the Federalist Papers before the enactment of the Constitution. And it was those three guys saying, this is why the Republic's going to be great. This is why the Constitution's going to be great. So it was a re-emphasis on, here's our studies, and here's how we got to the Constitution. And it was them trying to persuade the states on why a federal constitution, a federal government, would actually work and can thrive if it's done this way. And in Federalist Papers number 10 and number 14, they talk about how democracies are dangerous. Dangerous. James Madison, talking about democracies. So, something so simple, even though that's monumental and it's landmark and it's huge and key, but something so simple, Democrats have so ass backwards that they walk around saying we're a democracy. We're not a democracy. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, Republic. So before you even get to talking about immunity, you got to know a little bit about the law. But let's go to the origin. Our origin matters. The origin matters first. The original Constitution matters. The original foundation, the original literature, that matters first. And no. So you got to be able to listen and separate what President Trump's saying. The other thing that's key to why he's saying it the way he's saying it is he's not going to exonerate himself. There's nothing President Trump can say that will make these liberals like him, respect him, love him. There's nothing. It's like he said multiple times before. He can have the cure to cancer, and they'll find a way to hate him and the cure. So there's nothing he can say or do that's going to exonerate him in this operation. There's nothing a veteran can say. There's not a general out there. There's not. It's going to have to come from the other side. So what you're watching right now is a bunch of people telling on themselves, and we're going to get to that. So Obama and Russiagate, all right, all that stuff's hitting the fan now. Now it's hitting the fan to what your average person thinks is too late. Well, it's not too late, but because there's so much corruption, and the swamp was so deep, and all the stuff they had to fix between trafficking, and we're talking about full enforcement, not the old enforcement. So like guys from the Navy and guys from the Coast Guard, they've always had drug busts, but guess what they did under Obama and Bush and all the way back? They'd take the drugs that they busted and take it right back to where? The countries of where it came from. They never destroyed it, all right? So you got to know those things. President Trump, they're destroying this stuff. Everything. He launched wars against trafficking. He's launched all these other different wars against big pharma. All right, all these things. It's all in executive orders. That's why it matters. And then the executive order is no good unless there's a what? Enforcement of it. There's visuals of all these enforcements everywhere. All right, so now you get to the good stuff. Everybody was hanging up on Epstein last week, jumping ship with President Trump. Oh, you're splitting your base up and this, that. No, you're splitting your base up because you are splitting yourself up. You did that to yourself. If you jumped ship with President Trump, you did that because you're not seeing the bigger picture. And if you're a follower of me, you're not reading and studying anything I've provided for the last 3 years because it's all outlined there. If it wasn't, I wouldn't have fans make shirts like this for me. I wouldn't have people who buy my books if it wasn't explained out there. So you're not a part of the tribe. You can be a part of the tribe if you'll read, study, comprehend. You have to make it applicable to your brain, all right? Because the answers are there. It's as clear as what's the most clearest thing out there? Is the sky clear? Is water clear? It depends on what water you're looking at, right? So whatever you're looking at that's clear, it's as clear as that. And you can know everything without following drama or clickbait. So I'm going to read this again. I'm going to show you something because you have to interweave and come back to the immunity stuff. Watch this. So President Trump, on December the 20th, 2019, that's when the 20, it was the 20, let's see, it was 2020. So the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act was passed. All right. And that's when I've been talking about Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. All right, so there's an entry there. All right. And I've read it many times. It's very key because Title 50 is your Secretary of Defense and Congress. Title 50 is called War and National Defense. National. Very key. Very key. Chapter 33 is your War Powers Resolution of 1973, which is the last amendment to the overall War Powers Act of 1941-1942. They amended those and made the War Powers Resolution of 1973. In here is the entry that I talk about. It don't have any names in it, but it shows a date in here. It says not later than 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, and every 180 days thereafter. So it's covered. The first 100 and every 180 after that. The President shall submit to the Congressional Defense Committees a report of regular and irregular forces. Well, irregular is your special operations. Clandestine, covert, secretive, secret military. Until they want you to what? Know about it. That right there is what every soldier's operating under, because shortly after that, in the first 180 days of that clause, President Trump federalized 1 million reserve components active duty. That Executive Order 13912 on March 27, 2020 has not been revoked. It's still active. Shortly after, April the 30th, 2020, Executive Order 13919, so 7 orders later, Executive Order 13919, President Trump gave a direct order to the Secretary of Defense to have equal authority to federalize the selective reserves to active duty. The second 180 days, that's when your invocation of continuity of government, Executive Order 13961. 3 days later, Executive Order 13963 is the last and most recent order of succession within the Department of Defense. Every president has had an order of succession in every military domain except for one, because he wasn't president. Every president has had an order of succession in a military domain except for, quote-unquote, Joe Biden. Make that make sense. Oh, I can make it make sense. It's called a puppet government. My grandpa served during the most popular puppet government in history, 1943 to 1945. That's how I learned about puppet governments first, long before I ever went in military, long before I ever studied any of the military laws and orders. When I was a young fellow, my grandfather and his buddies talked about what happened in World War II. Puppet governments, government in exile. It's all strategic. It's not something that's common because you don't want it to be common. If you're having to use such tactic, then you have some serious issues in the world. All right? That's why they call it a war. But in this right here, it says this right here. It's kind of funny. It's kind of awesome in another way. Now watch this. You got to listen this. We're listening. In tiny writing under that, it says codification. Section, meaning the section 1550, section was enacted as a part of the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year of 2020 and not as a part of the War Powers Resolution, which comprises this chapter. Now, that was saved for just such a time as this. That's always been there. It wasn't added recently. I saved it just for this moment because what you're about to witness now, kicking into gear, as they amped and ramped this thing up with Obama, all right, because for a while there you didn't hear about Obama. You didn't hear anything. You thought, most people thought they were living their life and doing their thing and hating President Trump behind closed doors or whatever they were doing. You didn't hear about Obama. You didn't hear about Michelle. You didn't hear about Hillary. You didn't hear about Bill. And all of a sudden, they're the hot topic again. All of a sudden, there's a strike force, all right, that most people think is happening in real time. It's not. So I saved this codification for a reason, because this puts even more of the little cherries. This is the sprinkles on the icing. So it's like you bake a cake, you put your icing on it, you do the little frillies on there, little flowers or whatever it is, you put a deer on it if you're a guy, or whatever it is, put a boat on there, you get the designer to do that, and then you put whatever the other little icing, maybe a cherry on top of it. This is like the sprinkles now. Because this, if you're a patriot, this is even more of your life. Whoo, whoo, But it also shows people maybe the most biggest patriot of all, but they didn't read this. It says again, section was enacted as a part of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020, and not as a part of the War Powers Resolution, which comprises this chapter. That line right there is telling you that section 1550, it had to be placed in the War Powers Act because of what Bernie Sanders and Jasmine Crockett and all of them are saying. Oh, it's Congress who declares the war, right? Well, section 1550 is not an amendment to the overall War Powers Resolution. It's saying that this is an operation, a strategic operation, a special operation. Because once you know what all was invoked after December the 20th, 2019, which is military laws, reserve components, 1 million of them. All right, President Trump called up the National Guard as well with Title 10, Section 12406, which was what California was in the Marine Corps. All right, but the Marine Corps showed even more of wartime powers. All right, that showed you everything you need to know. This puts the sprinkles on it, or if you think the cherry is the last part, then that's the cherry on top. Because it's telling you this is not an amendment that a president's going to use in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. It's not an overall amendment. It's a temporary placement in the War Powers Act because that's where it needs to be what? Wartime power for whom? The Commander-in-Chief. That's what it says. That's what that's saying. It just says it in law terms, not layman's, which is what I do for you. All right? So it's all there, right? So when you amp this up back to get to the immunity, all right? No, treason and murder is not a part of immunity. You could also go to President Trump way back yonder when he was saying that Obama, he said, well, I'm just saying. When he was just saying about Obama's birth certificate being from Kenya, not Hawaii. Right? So President Trump already knows everything. We have it all. We've caught them all. Right? So now let's skip over, and I'm going to read section, I'm going to go to the number 23-939. So this is what got me temporarily blocked the other day, which quickly got back up. Is this. So watch this. This is Supreme Court docket 23-939. Now, if you were to Google it, it might pull up. I'm pretty sure it will. But what's funny about it is they also have a number on like the PDF where it reads here in the top left corner. It wasn't made to be easily searched right out the gate. You had to know it was there. Because when you go to the Supreme Court like website, .gov site, and you go to docket search, it's got a little box there. If you don't know what to type in there, then you could get lucky. You could type in something like a name or a first name or a last name and it pulls something up. But like President Trump, the last I checked, there were, I think, 24 tabs, meaning 1, 2, 3 tabs with 10 entries per page. Well, some of these, when you click on them, when you actually click on the one of, let's say, 10, and there's 24 tabs, Well, when you get in some of them, it's like you can't even see it. Entry, petition. You wouldn't even know what to click on. All right, so I've gone through most of them. There's still some that I'm reading because they're long. Some of them are 10, 15, 20 pages. Some of them are a page. It just depends on what it is. But it depends on what kind of petition it is as well. All right, so this is from March 19th, 2024. So when you go to SupremeCourt.gov, this is the cheat code for you. When you go there and you can find a little box of docket search, just type in Donald J. Trump. That's how he, that's how they I just drew a blank on the word, but that's how they logged it, basically. All right, so Donald J. Trump. Now, you're going to find those tabs, and you're going to find those entries. And most of the time, it starts with the most recent entry, and it works to the least. All right, but you're going to go to 23-939. When you click on that, it's going to have a lot of petitions in there. So then you got to scroll to the date, March 19, 2024. And there's a few entries for March 19, 2024. There's a few of them. Then you got to find the one that says the 3 amici curiae. All right, it's going to look like amici. That's what it looks like, but that's how you pronounce it, amici curiae. All right, and it'll say something about 3 military officers. May say something like that. Got to get some octane in me. That's my sweet tea. All right, Milo sweet tea, best sweet tea on the planet. All right, so when you go in this case, all right, right off the gate, I'm going to say what it says. It says, in the Supreme Court of the United States, Donald J. Trump, petitioner, versus United States. Whew. If that don't give you chills, I don't know what would. It says on writ, and it'll say, I can't even man. I'm going to tell you what it reads. I'm going to go over and just cheat code it. It says, this is the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Indicates that the Supreme Court of the United States is reviewing a case that was previously decided by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Boy, I mean, if that don't give you chills again, I don't know what can. So I'm about to read what it is. Now, most of you have heard me read this because I've already broken it down. It says, brief for 3 former senior military officers and executive branch officials as amici curiae supporting petitioner. One of those is Keith Kellogg, who wrote the last and most recent national security strategy on the Department of Defense. Keith Kellogg. Who did President Trump thank multiple times on his platforms and speeches? I want to thank a general who's been with me before all of this. What is this, Mr. President? What is this? Can you tell the people what this is? Can you define what this is? This operation. All right. So it asks this question. Let me scroll down here. I'm going to read the whole thing this time. Introduction and interest of amici curiae. Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That question was posed by a member of the panel at an oral argument in the court below. Amici curiae, who have served as military combat generals and senior officials at the Pentagon and have held other senior executive branch positions, submit that the answer to the panel member's question is a resounding no. A president of the United States enjoys broad authority to direct the military with very few limitations. But one such limitation is that the president's orders may not contravene the Constitution or the laws of the United States. Accordingly, the president has no authority to order the military to assassinate a political rival. Furthermore, the military is required not to carry out such an unlawful non-military order if given. Indeed, any military officer who carried out or issued such an order would be committing the gravest of crimes: murder. Supreme Court Docket 23-939. Donald J. Trump Petitioner versus United States. President Donald John Trump cannot look like a dictator. You can't reverse things. It's like I've been explaining to people who you just want to see people hung and executed. You look the same as the liberals who are yelling and screaming for the execution of President Trump. You have no dignity. You have no respect. I believe in punishment. I believe in capital punishment. But you got to listen to the literature. You got to listen to the terminology. Why did we let it get to this point? Why did you let it get to this point? Why did all this evil fester to this level of corruption? Because you let it down. You did that. You let it get this far. You stopped knowing your rights and your duties and your roles and your responsibilities and accountabilities according to the what? The Declaration of Independence. You let it get there. Punishment's going to be there. Everything from 2017 to 2021 was a resetting of the legislative branch. Laws show this. 2021 to 2025 was a resetting of the executive branch. Laws show this. 2025, the present day, is the resetting of the judicial branch. Laws show this. We have to reset our fundamental principles back, or it's never going to get any remotely close to being what it used to be, even though none of us have ever lived in the America of what America is supposed to look like. None of us. But God gave some of us, a few of us, God gave us the sense and the ability to know what our founders established. No one should be rooting for war. No one should be rooting for any kind of death of that nature whatsoever. That's why the Bible tells you to pray for your enemies. The Bible tells you this. God tells you to pray for your enemies. God tells you that. Is it tough? Yes, it's tough. I had a quote-unquote active duty try to steal my federal trademark. It's tough to love that person. It's tough to want to pray for that person. But the Bible commands that. That's not some humanitarian, just known thing to do. The Bible commands this. These people try to frame me, talking to certain kinds of females, and you can probably know what kind they were trying to do. Fake Photoshop. But the Bible says I got to pray for these people. Not get vengeance on them. That's what the Bible says. In the Law of War Manual, under the humanitarian section, it tells you once you've shot. So let's just make a scenario. There's multiple variables and scenarios. Let's just make one. It says once you've inflicted a wound on your enemy, if it does not inspire them, kill them, for people that don't know the terminology, once you've inflicted them, especially if they raise the white flag and they say, hey, I'm you don't kill them, but you also don't inflict them anymore. You take them as a prisoner of war, and then it shows you the Law of War Manual and humanitarian law of a POW. That don't mean punishment won't be there. It don't mean that no one's not going to get punished. See, and that's where people have a struggle with listening. They hear that straight out the gate, and they think, you don't want punishment and judgment. I do. But we have to get to a place where we clean out, and that's what's been taking place, the clean out of this system that was corrupted with all these evil people, and it made average people think this is a norm. This is not the norm. So you got to go in and clean out this system. You got to go in there and reestablish the norm. You got to reestablish the laws, reestablish the orders, reestablish the principles, reestablish the rules, reestablish the procedures. Therefore, we don't get to this place again. Therefore, you say, hey, this is the repercussion if you screw up. This level, this level, this level, and this level. Here's the repercussion. The people out there yelling for justice, you don't even know and care about a system that's been cleaned out to even maintain and sustain it on the flip side. You just want to see justice, but you don't want to know how to maintain and sustain the clean out where we don't ever get to that. And that's for your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. It's for humanity. It's piss poor pathetic where we've reached in society with the attitudes out there. Wanting justice, but don't want a cleaned out system. Wanting justice, but don't know and don't want to know what it took to get to that. And then the flip side of it, how we maintain, how we sustain, learning that, applying that, making that principle even at your skill set, applying it to you, even if you're not law enforcement, even if you're not a representative, even if you're not in a town hall or city council. Doesn't matter. Men and women lay their life on the line daily for you to be able to have the life you have. And until there was a line drawn in the sand that said enough's enough, we're not doing this anymore. Of course there was going to be hiccups. Of course there was going to be bumps. Of course there was going to be bruises. Of course there was going to be tragedies. Of course. Because it was never the way it was supposed to look in the first place. You have never lived under an America that it's supposed to look like. So the people say, oh, people die every day. People die every day. That's correct. Flip your script around. Get on the warrior side. Get on the right side of humanity. That's what you're witnessing right now. And that's a great point to bring up this thing right here. See how thick that is? I shared this book. Now it's blank from this point. I'm going to show you for a reason. I shared this book 2 or 3 years ago. I didn't write this one. I shared this 2 and 3 years ago on my platforms, and you should have seen. You should have seen the comment boxes. You want to talk about pathetic patriots? Pathetic. All right? The book isn't about, the filth from the standpoint of that you want to see it, but you should be able to look at it to see the filth of what Joe Biden, the real Joe Biden, got to. Joe, Hunter, everything. This is the Biden laptop report book by Marco Polo that just got validated July 21st, 2025, just this past Monday. Got validated on the new quote-unquote Hunter interview, which is not real Hunter. But this is because so many people don't appreciate what's been cleaned out. All this stuff has to be drug out because there's so much monumental, historical filth and trash that had to be sorted through. But also for people to see, okay, we can't dump all this on one day with them. You can't dump all this on 1 week. You got to hit them one at a time. This right here shows the linkage in the very back. If I can find it really fast. And you heard it in the video. You heard them say about where the laptop, how it got passed down. I'm not going to be able to find it. There's so much stuff in here. But I shared it on my pages. How Rudy Giuliani got the laptop to this group of people. There's so much filth in here, but anyway, the link is in there. I mean, we're talking about details. Even the Midnight Rider don't do this. They have wire transfers. You'll see stuff like that. Let me find something that don't have a filthy image on it. They got all everything. Phone numbers, phone records, wire transfers, everything. Text messages, emails. It's everything. All the filth, all the garbage. And yes, Joe Biden did know what Hunter was doing. All the text messages are in here. And then you heard the new interview with this dude in quote-unquote Hunter. In the very first 30 seconds or a minute of the interview, the guy goes, the host goes into an individual setting where he's sitting at his desk. We're going to discuss the laptop. And then he ties in and shows a photo of Rudy Giuliani. There's a link in this book that shows the tree of when it left when it left where it got dropped off with the tech guy and the FBI, and then it was given to Rudy Giuliani, and you think that was just, you think that the greatest mayor in a rigged setup of 9/11, you really think that Rudy Giuliani just stumbled on this on his own? All of it, everything, links Joe to China, everything, all of it. Shows all the pornography in here. Now they bleep out, they put little images, they put little blurs on the private spots, but they show everything. Old Hunter. See, criminals tell on themselves. Criminals actually leave traces. Dumb criminals. All right? And Old Hunter's the one that brought them down. So it's all leveraged. All right? And you're watching the disclosure of that. So that one podcast, or whatever you want to call it, interview, even though I know that's not really Hunter, but it linked everything together. It links it all. It validated this. Marco Polo. You can purchase it to this day. Marco Polo. All right, you can look this up. Purchase it. 636 pages right here. Everything. Links all of them together. Obama, Joe, Bill, Hillary, you name it. All right here. Everything. And this one interview this week links it all together. Rudy Giuliani giving it to this group. So everything's there. You could have already known this. So it validates even more so, even though I already knew it. And I'm not the only patriot on here that already knew it. There's a lot of patriots on here that already knew. In the comment boxes, I already knew. So what you're seeing is, you're seeing the plea bargains that were taken way back here. Now they're telling on themselves. The only way President Trump will be exonerated is when they tell on themselves. And this is just light. We're not to the good stuff yet. We're not to the Supreme Court dockets yet of Obama and murder. Because all of the people who jumped ship with President Trump and Epstein, well, actually they jumped ship first with Iran, which that's even more hilarious. That you would jump ship with a president who is doing what exactly a president's supposed to do under law. President Trump's exoneration with Republicans, conservatives already is supposed to be because the law shows that. So why do Republicans and conservatives look like liberals? President Trump says it all the time. I just shared his post again that was from October 2023, but he says it a lot in many different ways. He said, why are Republicans always on different pages? Why are you always fighting the wrong things? Why aren't you fighting the tyranny? Why aren't you fighting the deep state? Why aren't you fighting? Now, the deep state's been eliminated, but why aren't you fighting all the little low-level swamp liberals out there? Why are people attacking me over if it's a real President Trump or a fake President Trump? I mean, that shows you how stupid we've gotten in this nation. I don't care if you ever think that the President Trump I'm with is real or not. I've been around the doubles and the real president. They haven't. So see, it doesn't matter, real, fake. I've been around all of them. But I've also been proven that I can be trusted. When I pull up with my QR code at Mar-a-Lago, you know what the Secret Service does to me? Bro, we know who you are. Put that thing down. Now, only you who follow me will believe that, because you'll have people out there who, if they can't see it, they can't believe it. Well, you can't film Secret Service either, so, and you wouldn't want to, because that's just stupid, all right? But doesn't matter. Can't please everybody? There you go, all right? So now, Letitia James. Let's get into Letitia James. What did President Trump just post today? Letitia James is tied to what? $9.6 billion, not million, but billion dollars. To whom? Iran. Uh-oh! All those who jumped ship with President Trump in Iran, guess what you look like right now? You look a little word that someone told me to refrain from, but I can't refrain from it because you look stupid! Sorry. We don't look stupid. Veterans that know what's going on, we don't look stupid. Patriots that know what's going on, they don't look stupid. So why do you look stupid? Because you don't know simple laws and orders. And then when you know simple, you'll lead to the what? More complex of a special operation, strategic operation, special operations with government exile, puppet governments. It's all in special operations. Do you see what little hat is sitting right here on my mantle? You see the tip of the spear there? You ever see President Trump doing this all the time? You got the idiots out there on the Republican side saying that's Space Force, and you got the idiots on the liberal side saying that's Illuminati. No, it's not. It's tip of the spear, special operations. And every single part from 2017 to present day can be backed with special operations. Tactics, strategies, everything. Laws, orders, regulations, publications. You can't support the military without supporting military laws, military orders, military regulations, and military publications. Because the publications are your strategies, your procedures, etc., your tactics, etc., and there are layers of them. So Letitia James being linked to Iran, and then you had some low-level idiots out there. One of them was in the state of Nebraska with some little like Tribune, like some little newspaper out there saying that President Trump was false with saying Iran was tied to the what? Assassination attempts. So all this stuff, special operations. I won't break down the special operation part tonight of the quote-unquote assassination stuff because it's a whole different thing. All right, but the appeals court, you saw President Trump put up another post this week where he said about the AP was banned from entering where? The White House. The Associated Press has not even been at the White House for months. So if they're writing any pieces on President Trump, if they're writing any pieces on anything to do with anything, with the government, military, etc., then they're doing what? They're violating what they're supposed to be doing. They're probably writing off of what? What they hear somewhere else. So when you have an appeals court, this is what's cool about it. When you have an appeals court who upholds a ban, that means it was already in what? An injunction. It means it was already put in place before it was upheld. Same thing with the invocation and the revocation. You can't revoke something that wasn't invoked. You can't uphold something that wasn't what? Put into place already. So that's another cherry on the cake for the Midnight Rider Rides Again, because all this stuff, so I've had all this stuff in print for over 4.5 years now, almost 5 years, like publicly for my friends and family. All right, so it's all there. So it's been a military occupation. It's been a continuity government. All right, if you're new here, welcome, but don't say anything until you learn it. But you can't argue with this stuff. So 47 U.S. Code, Section 606, is actually titled War Powers of the President. It's from the Telecommunications Act in 1934. Were you alive in 1934? Anybody? If you are, you're really cool and really hip to be on Instagram. If you were alive or born, even born in 1934, you pretty doggone cool and hip, even on Facebook. Telecommunications Act of 1934. The president can suspend, he can pull, he can terminate, anything with telecommunications, which could be radio, TV, internet, broadcasting, any sort. And it's titled War Powers of the President. So if you went to Google right now and you typed in Title 47, or if you want to type it, you can type it that way, Title 47, Section 606, or you can put in 47 United States Code, Section 606. War Powers of the President. And you're having another article put up about the Associated Press being banned from Mar-a-Lago, the White House, and President Trump. The only way President Trump could do that is being a wartime president. With wartime orders from what? Wartime laws, which are what? Unique laws, strategic laws, special operations. Just like the whole California thing recently, the Marine Corps, and then also your National Guard. You'll hear people out there saying that the military can't operate with civilian forces, civilian law enforcement. Yes, they can. Joint publication, 3-57. Go to page 46. Joint publication. Did you hear what that means? Don't let Snoop Dogg or Willie hear the word joint, because they'll go in a whole different direction. And if you're a pothead, then you're going to go in that direction too. But if you're a level head, and if you're a military head, and if you're a law enforcement head, you're going to hear joint, which means what? You can join something. Well, what is it about? Civil and military operations. That's what it's titled. 3-57, page 46. It specifically tells you that generally you don't want Title 10 forces with the population. Generally. But it says what? Unless what? The Constitution or Congress deems so. Well, that's what Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 is. That's why President Trump, everything he's acting with and operating with, it's all under that National Defense Authorization Act budget, but section that was put in temporarily to the War Powers Act, which shows you again on here, I'm going to read it one more time. Section was enacted as a part of the NDAA for fiscal year 2020 and not as a part of the War Powers Resolution. Now, if it were completed, it wouldn't be in here. And if they kept it in here and they wanted to keep it in here, then they'd have some form of a termination date. It would have a resolution. That's why it's called the War Powers Resolution. Well, you wouldn't have all these executive orders invoked. All these executive orders are still invoked. Every one of them. They're still there. They ain't been terminated. So when you have military orders in place and you have troops that are still invoked, you got to have a revocation of that, which means a what? A joint resolution between whom? The President and Congress, because they're the ones that put it there. And it's more specific towards whom? Congress. They put it there. So that's why it's funny when you hear all these people out there who think that Jasmine Crockett, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders, and whoever's saying that, they think that it's real. It's not. You know, it's not. That's just we're still in the continuity of government. So I don't know what all that they have planned to drag out. I know a little bit of it because it's real easy to see. It's real easy to see once you know this stuff. But I don't know how they're going to do it. I'm not in the command room. But I know that they ordained certain people like me and different people to be in these positions because we know what's going on lawfully, we know what's going on militarily, and we can give you kind of a synopsis without a what? I don't ever, you've never heard me say, oh, I think this is going to happen on this day. I don't do that. I say this is what it's looking like and can look like. This is what this law's for. This is what this order is. This is what this tactic is. But I don't know specifically. And only a few know that. And for the integrity of the military, integrity of federal, even though they're bringing federal law down, they're bringing federal government, let's say it that way, bringing federal government down to a small level, not big government, but small federal government. All right, for the integrity of all the men and women who are in these key positions, staying in their lanes everywhere that's been nominated and put in these positions, for the integrity of that, you wouldn't want everybody knowing about it. That's why it's humorous to me. It's humorous in one way, but I get upset for everybody else in another way. When you hear people out there who say, I'm military intelligence, no, you're not. No, they're not. That ain't how military intelligence operates, functions, and works. And I wasn't military intel. I have buddies who are and were. And for the integrity of that and the integrity of them, all right, I speak on their behalf in another kind of way. Anybody who tells you that, no, they're not. That ain't how it works. The other thing is this. There was a veteran who I was talking to this past week on a podcast, on a Q&A, all right, who just wants his DD-214 changed to reflect something different, all right? But in reality, if he'd have been 20 years younger, he wanted it to reflect that where he could go back in. There's a lot of good men and women who left the military because of what Obama had done to it organically. There's a lot of people who are forced out like me who have some pretty unique stories, and when it's the right time and the right place and we get to tell what that was, it's going to make sense what happened all the way up to Obama and that trash organization because it wasn't an administration. It was an organization because they were doing certain things monetarily, all right, not for the people, but for whom? Themselves. All right. So when you know these things, all these men and women who have either were forced out or didn't want out but got out because it was so atrocious, there's a lot of good men and women who would love to be back in at an operating capacity and an official operating capacity in the military at their jobs, their roles, their duties, all right, if they knew it was completely cleaned out, which it is. The military has been cleaned out and they're still cleaning some. All right, they're still getting some of the rats out. All right, but they got to let the rats be exposed. All right, so little things like that. That's what people need to know. That's exactly what people need to know. That everything that's taking place. So a lot of good men and women will love to be back in. So for the sake, but also the integrity of those men and women, even the ones I don't even know, when you hear podcasters out there making it sound like they got intel or someone gave them intel and they ain't ever been in the military, don't work like that. Sorry, it just doesn't. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend it does because it doesn't. That would be me violating my oath if I made people think that. That ain't how it works. And that is not how President Donald John Trump works whatsoever. Whatsoever. So you can probably know, a lot of patriots probably know some people that I'm talking about out there in the quote-unquote podcaster world. So be it. Ain't nothing they can do to me. All right. And if they tried, then it would be very, very bad day for them in court. All right. They think that's some kind of defamation or whatever. It's not defamation. That's calling a spade a spade. There's nobody out there operating with some kind of fake name and a hidden profile. That ain't how it works. All right. If you're secret military, your name's either shown and you're not talking about that, or you wouldn't be shown, period. That's just how that works. So, now, when you tie all these in, when you take immunity with quote-unquote Obama, no, immunity does not cover treason. It does not cover murder whatsoever. President Donald John Trump cannot look like he's tied to a vengeance towards Obama and only Obama. This is opening up the massive case. It separates President Trump. He's over here doing what he's supposed to be doing. We're under a military occupation, military operation, continuity of government. Law shows that. It don't matter what anybody says. The law shows that. And when you know the law and you know how PEDs work, Presidential Emergency Action Documents, they're draft classified. You can't Google those. You can't Google what's in them. But when you have a continuity government and you have a man like President Trump, which the only thing that separates him from everybody else, the only thing that separates him from everybody else would have to be the very thing, again, that makes this whole operation different. Was to not start a foreign war. Was to not start any kind of war. It was not to start anything. All right, so the laws show he didn't. All these, Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, the codification there. It's not a war. It's operations. They're bringing all these national emergencies to a halt, to an ending. Syria's one of them. He eliminated one executive order with a national emergency with Syria. We've opened our trade market up with Syria. We opened up with Vietnam. We've opened up with Iraq. All right, the market, U.S. market. Not military or anything, U.S. markets. All these different places. You got to go look at what they said about him in 2015, the temperament of him. He was going to start nuclear wars and all this other stuff. No, he hasn't. The one thing that separates him was to not start any war. Nothing. These are operations. It's bringing all of these bureaucracies, the bureaucrats, executive orders with national emergencies to an end. That's why you got to know that. That's why it's key. So he has to separate himself in another kind of way. All of these people are going to tell on themselves. Hunter is just the tip of the iceberg. Because that one interview, Monday, July 21st, 2025, that one interview, it ties in Rudy Giuliani again, giving the laptop to this Marco Polo group here. All right. 636-page report, which ties, quote-unquote, well, it ain't even quote-unquote, it ties real Joe to China, receiving millions of dollars from China just for making an introduction to someone. Hey, this is so-and-so, pay me. Receipts, all of it. Wire transfers, checkbooks, Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, everything. It's all here. All of it. The pornography. It shows Ashley Biden. It shows Hunter's relationship with his brother that he, in the interview, the worst day of my life was my brother dying. Well, you were banging his wife right after that. All right? Sorry. If you don't like my slang terminology, sometimes you have to put it that way. He was banging his brother's widow. All right? Then, guess what? It shows in here. It specifically says it. Don't show it, but it says it. It's layers of messages where she turned on him because he was appearing naked, butt naked, watching pornographic films around her daughter, which would be his niece. And if you want to continue to be a lazy ass out there, this should be the thing this week that should flip your switch. Whoever you are, flip your script wherever you are. That should be the thing that should absolutely drive you to want to know what's currently in laws and orders that President Trump's working with that makes him different and unique than anybody. But especially the liberals right now. Liberals are atrocious right now. And when they are supporting, quote-unquote, Joe, even though they don't know he's real or not, doesn't matter. When they support Joe Biden, Kamala, and all this stuff, this is what they're supporting. This is what they're supporting right here. Child porn, sex trafficking, child trafficking, human trafficking, it's all in here. This is what liberals. So this should make you want to get tough and stand up and start fighting more and more. All right. Some of us knows what's been going on a long time. We didn't just get here. They didn't just put me here. I didn't just spring up overnight. All right. It was all God's timing. So you should want to do that. You should want to. Absolutely. You should be like fired up because now it's the tip of the iceberg. Hunter's telling on everything. They're going to tell on themselves. That's how President Trump will be exonerated. Now, you're going to see justice. Yes, you're going to see justice. You're going to see military tribunals. Yes, you're going to see all that. But you shouldn't just go, oh, well, Derek Jonhson or so-and-so just said we're going to see military tribunals. And that don't mean sit in your recliner and twiddle your thumbs until it pops up on your phone or your TV. That's what that don't mean. In order for us not to replicate the swamp and let the swamp grow back, even if it took 50 years, 100 years, or 200, you should want to know all this stuff where you can pass it to your grandkids or your kids or your grandkids or your great-grandchildren. You should want to do that. That's why books are important. These kind of books. That's why these are important. These aren't just for me. These are for the future. Now, I'm not Elizabeth Warren. I don't have 1 and 1,024% of Native American in me. I have a lot more Native American blood in me by results, but I'm not 20 or 30% Native American. But Native Americans, we look at things 7 generations out. We live today as if the 7th generation can pick up what we've put together and live freely. So when you hear all the liberals out there talking about, oh, the Native Americans' land were taken from them, well, guess who can speak on behalf of Native Americans? I can. I can prove it on DNA. All right, can prove it's there. I may look like a white, pale boy, but you know, I've got some. I got a lot more than Elizabeth Warren's got. I can assure you that. You should want to act the same way. You should want to replicate that. So you're seeing the tip of the iceberg. So you got the immunity talks out there, treason. President Trump shared, it's been about a month ago now, all roads lead to Obama. And then he also shared what? Reshare if you'd like to see military tribunals. President Trump wouldn't be teasing you like that. President Trump wouldn't be playing with your emotions like that. Come on, give him more credit. This ain't about me. This ain't about even veterans from that standpoint, but give President Trump more credit. If you claim to love the man, support the man, give him more credit. He wouldn't play with your emotions like that. He wouldn't play with your spirits like that. He wouldn't play with your bank account like that. Give him more credit. But the only way you can give him more credit is to read what's in place, to study what he did, what makes him different, what makes this mission different, what makes this operation different, what makes his face, name, brand, image different. Why did they pick an outsider? Why did they pick a guy who was never a politician? Why? It's very easy. Very simple. And quit following all these idiots out there that say President Trump's been dead for years, and all you people, and Israel this, and Iran that. Israel's been in our National Defense Authorization Act since 1961. And matter of fact, I pulled that up just to read the new one. So the House passes fiscal year 26 defense bill investing in America's military superiority. All right, now it goes to the Senate next. But guess what it says right here? So here, for all the Israel, they did this and that. This shows how dumb people are. They're not seeing the bigger mission. The bigger is to reset the world. Not change the world, but reset the world. Supporting our close ally Israel by providing $500 million for Israeli cooperative missile defense programs and $122.5 million for U.S.-Israel cooperative development programs. Did you hear those words? It said cooperative, close ally. So if you're cooperating with your close ally, that means you're having what? A relationship with them. So the people who don't like Israel are showing their colors that they don't know much about the God that some of them claim that they serve and Christians of. All right. It also shows they don't know much about President Trump and this operation. It doesn't matter what Israel was tied to in the 1960s. If you read the Law of War Manual, you know that you can't do certain things based on 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 years ago. If that were the case, you would always be right. Because what is that little saying? Hindsight's what? 2020? Right? Which is why if you're going to be tough and strong, women, this goes even to women out there. If someone's harassing you or doing you wrong from that kind of stuff, be strong then. Don't wait 20, 30, 40, 50 years when someone's in a position of power, status, money, fame to go, oh, he tried to kiss me in the hallway 47 years ago. We got to reset everything. We got to reset minds. We got to reset mindsets. We got to reset skill sets. We got to reset everything. I mean, it's atrocious. It's atrocious. Same thing with me. You know, people stealing my content. I'm the one who made all podcasters have to step their game up. Because what's going to happen is forever timestamp in a book. I'm the only one with the books. Intellectual property protects that. No one can copy that. No one whatsoever. All right, so that's going down in history for that. All right, but I did that because God called me back into a position because I begged God for a position like that. I said, God, you know my heart. You know I got the right heart. You know I have no sponsors. None of that. I had someone write me about paid sponsorship. Do you see any paid sponsorship on here? I'll wear my shirts. I wear my hats sometimes, but all right, I'm a country music artist. Before you, the people know it. I have billboard hits. I have T-shirts and gear. I remember the days when I put a post up with a great song that I wrote with a #1 hit writer, and I got one share. One share. One share. I remember those days. I've been on both sides of the aisle. And that song was just as good then as it is now. But that was my desire. And God had other plans. And I asked and begged God. I said, I'd love to serve again in another kind of capacity. Voila. There was no way I could go to every household and speak for 4 and 6 hours. There was no way. I tried. And a lot of people who knew me before, we spent many hours on the phone. They can attest to that. I would wear my voice out daily. And I mainly was trying to talk to preachers. Because preachers also need to step their game up. There's a lot of preachers out there pumping fear, fear, fear. And when you're a preacher, if you hear me, preachers, you're the very ones that don't need to be speaking any kind of fear. You're the very ones who not only need to read your Bible a little more, but you also the very ones that need to be reading the laws and the orders, because the Bible even tells you to obey the laws of the land. And only you'll know when the laws of the land do what? Reflect God's what? plan, and purpose. So they do what? They can join. They go together. It's kind of like couples, right? It's not 50-50. It's 100-100. We got to get that changed again. We get all these people all over the internet just looking like a bunch of you-know-whats. We got to reset everything. We got to get it back to where people think on their own. Empower yourself. That's why I do hate it more than anything. I know I'm a good person, and people who know me knows I'm a good person. People who know me knows I haven't changed. People who knows me knows I don't drive a Ferrari, a Corvette, or anything. I have a Ford F-150. All right, and it's 10 years old, going on 11 from the factory. All right, my other one is 17 years old. All right, it got a bumper on it that needs fixed. It looks like it's been plowed into something. All right, but I don't care. I don't personally care. So when I see podcasters out there who are deliberately misleading people, of course I'm going to be upset about it because I'm keeping my oath. I'm doing what God asked me to do and called me to do. So of course I am, because I hate seeing people being what? Tricked, deceived, conned, clickbait. So you got to strengthen your skills. When someone asks a question like, what do you think about Obama? Question mark. Don't comment. That's an algorithm setup. They're an attention whore. When they ask a question that's a short question, and they got a lot of, they want that. When you comment on it, it makes the visuals of that post go into more timelines out there, especially if they have a blue check. You got to get tougher and stronger, people. You have to. If you want to maintain and sustain this, because those people who can't think like I can on the front versus what they do, they'll regurgitate or they'll steal information or they'll twist information, they'll change it up just enough, all right? But they don't think on the front, that's dangerous. That's how we grow back the swamp quick. You need people who think on the front. And I have a buddy who I talk about, and I haven't said his name yet because I'm doing this on purpose, but I have a friend who was a contractor for the Doomsday plane, the E4, the E-4B, the Doomsday plane. Financial guru. He's writing the financial aspects of this whole operation and how President Trump pulled it off. All right, financially. So, you need to know good people who think on the front. You need to know people who know how to think, critical think, problem-solving skills. You got to know all this stuff. And it don't matter who you are and where you are and what level you're at. It doesn't matter. Always give that extra 10%. Right when you think you're fatigued, right when you think you're tired, you're giving up, right when you think you just don't have any more in you. Try to think about Rocky movies. He portrayed all those movies that way, but they were great for a reason. Because right when he thought he was going to give up and he was fatigued, he started thinking in his head, what am I fighting for? What am I standing for? What am I here for? Is it money? Is it fame? Is it attention? Or is it pride, family, friends, integrity, strength, role model? And President Trump, something as simple as an executive order this week for saving college sports shows you there is a monument, it's a biblical, monumental, historical operation. Because money infiltrated college sports. Money paying college athletes millions of dollars. It shows you you're watching a strategic and special operation to reset, fundamentally reset back to our origin. So when you hear liberals say, President Trump's taking us back 50 years barefoot pregnant in the kitchen. No, honey. You're going back to 1776. If you don't want to be a gunner, you can play the drums. Get your butt on the front line. Let's go. It's time to toughen up, America. It's time to toughen up. So everything that's happening right now is pre-planned. That's exactly what a presidential emergency action document is. A PED, a presidential emergency action document. There's 4 components to it. Executive order, national emergency, proclamation, and a treaty. You know what those all require? A president. Every one of those require a president. When you have a continuity government, you have a presidential emergency action document. When you have a president like President Trump, which you've never seen in history, new sheriff's in town. That sheriff has to separate himself from all the other deputy sheriffs. Because you ain't never seen a sheriff like this. Therefore, they ain't getting title of the term sheriff. They were all deputy sheriffs, and most of the presidents were like Barney Fife with his one little bullet in his shirt pocket. President Donald John Trump, he ain't going in that category of any of those. So when you know what separates that man from the swamp, you will absolutely know that what you're watching is a biblical, monumental, historical, strategic, and special operation. And laws show that. Orders being carried out right now show they've been carried out like no other time in history. It's a full-fledged clean out of the swamp. That is what you're witnessing. So if you want to get into the mindset of President Trump, if you want to get in that, you got to know laws and orders first. But then when you hear him say something like, I helped out Obama, immunity is going to help him out. Not with treason, not with murder. That's President Trump making sure he separates himself, therefore it doesn't look like a coup, all right, a takeover the wrong way, all right, so that's making sure. As we lead closer to what? This is all soft disclosure. The Hunter Biden, quote-unquote, interview, that's going to lead into bigger and bigger and bigger. I personally don't like that it had to drag out this long, but there's so much filth, so much corruption, so much trash, so much garbage, so much politics, not government and military, but politics that was played through the years. They had to go with what was relevant as well, what they could absolutely do by the law, but the only laws that made this applicable but made this possible, it's military. And you have all that evidence. When you go back over my videos and watch, and I'm planning on doing a back to the basics here soon to go through 2017 to 2025 again and go over the highlights of that and then bring it into present day. But again, you got to know the literature. You got to know what an executive order is. You got to know what a national emergency is. You got to know when they're paired together. You got to know what a proclamation is. You got to know what a treaty is. Then you got to go know what a special operation is. Special Operations Command. Go study some of their stuff. Go to the Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide. Go read it a little bit. There's government exile. The puppet governments, puppet states. All right, go read those. All you have to do is Google those. The Google information is actually pretty accurate on all those. That's what you got to do. You got to get a basis and a foundation of those before you can jump into the actual visuals of what you've been watching. That way it can be what? Made applicable to you. You can't just listen to me weekly and listen and listen. If you're listening and thinking there's just going to be like a red lining or like this, like, oh, like it's not a destination, it's a journey. And too many people, I think, are thinking there's like this destination that everybody's going to. We're not. It's a journey. There's revelations daily, but it's building up. Sure, it is building up. There will be military tribunals, most definitely. That's the one thing that's going to set aside President Trump. It's also going to exonerate him in another kind of way. And then the other portion that exonerates him will be them telling on themselves. And that started already. Hunter Biden laptop, the interview, that started. Letitia James, AOC, all these things have started that. Now Obama coming back on the scene. All of it started. But what gives me passion and what gives me, like that fire still, is that we want to maintain and sustain this on the flip side. So it ain't over. Even when the fat man sings. The fat man is Big Mike, right? But I had to put a joke in there. But when it's all said and done from that angle, the work starts after that, because we have to do what? We have to teach our history. We have to reestablish schools on our principles, on our foundations. That's going to require teaching about James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay. It's going to require talking about, okay, the Revolutionary War, and then why they did it this way, and why did they declare war before they had any piece of paper. We got to do this stuff again. Simple. Keep it simple, stupid. Now, ironically, that word stupid there, it's not calling someone stupid. If you go look up the history of that term, KISS, keep it simple, stupid, it actually don't mean what it means. It actually means to basically keep it stupid simple. Meaning, like, don't complicate this. Stop making this bigger than what it is. Keep it simple. And also, I'll leave you on the words of what Dan Scavino said not long ago, who was one of President Trump's right-hand men. He said what? Don't let the 10% of liberals make you think they're the 90%. They're not. But I'm going to add to that. Don't think that all these 99% of podcasters who are always drama-based, propaganda-based, blowing smoke up your dress, getting you ruffled, your feathers ruffled, your spirits ruffled, angry, bitter, frustrated, tired, upset, mad, groaning, griping, complaining, moaning, all these things. Major Jim O'Connor is someone that launched his first podcast at 73 years old. Major. Special Operations, you've seen him on podcasts with me. Some of you have. He's now a bishop on the good side of God. And he tells you all the time, like the Bible says, if it's not of love, power, and a sound mind, you don't want it. If it's not inspiring you, if it's not positive, if it's not of a sound mind replication, you don't want it. You don't want it. Now, I get fired up sometimes, and I feel like I want to go. I feel like I'm ready. I get fired up. I'll say some four-letter words I probably shouldn't say. I raise my voice at times. I do. But that's passion. Because I care about people the right way. I put in my time on my dime. All right. I travel across this country. I speak. I love people. I love people. All right. But if I'd have had it my way, if it had been Dear Johnson's way 6 years ago, guess what I've been doing? I'd had a #1 hit in country music, not a #1 best-selling book. See, if I'd have done things my way. Well, we didn't do things my way because I did what? I became a Christian November the 8th, 2021. I became a Christian. I didn't become a perfect person. I didn't stop saying four-letter words and sharing Ted Nugent that says a slur word. No, I didn't stop. I'm working on that aspect of my life. But I changed things differently. I put God in front of me, not behind me. And I'm growing just like you are out there. I'm a growing man, all right? And I put God first, though. I put him here daily, right there. And God don't care how slow you walk. He don't care if you have to crawl as long as you keep him in front of you. But the moment you put him right here beside you, like your buddy, all right, not your mentor, not your trainer, the moment you put him beside you like your buddy or behind you like an ex, that's when you mess up. So if you put this in front of you and know that God put certain people in your life for a reason, the way you tell that is consistency. The way you debunk someone is to go read what they're giving you. 99% of these podcasters ain't giving you anything. They're not giving you solutions. They're not giving you receipts. It's clickbait. It's drama. It's propaganda. That's not the future. That's your past. That's the swamp. Why would you support something that replicates the swamp? if you're a President Trump supporter, what does he tell you? What does he say all the time? We're draining the swamp, right? He said, no one from my first administration will be with me anymore. He said, why did the swamp, why did they fire people in this department, then take them here and put them in this department? And then they fire them from that department and put them in this department. They never outright fired them. So President Trump tells you all the time, we're draining the swamp. So why do you support something that replicates it? You can't, not integrity-wise. So once you ever separate, whoever you are out there, once you ever separate and see what's positive, powerful, you're going to find that through consistency. And all these other podcasters out there, they show like .net and all these weird sites. And they, this is the... If it don't come from the horse's mouth. Now, President Trump, if he's a horse, he's an Arabian horse. He's a beautiful horse. All right, he's a powerful horse. But if it don't come from President Donald John Trump, and depending on how he's saying it, what he's saying it, he may be showing you a tip of the spear, but as you hear it audio and you don't see the tip of the spear, you may take the audio differently than what it was intended. Therefore, you got to know what? President Donald John Trump's plan. The plan's in laws and orders. So therefore, you got to do what? Know how law works, how orders operate, and you got to know the literature, the language, the verbiage, the context, right? Then you got to know military, which would be what? Also, military verbiage, military context, military language, all right? Glossary, index, terminology, commas go in certain places, colons go in certain places, semicolons go in certain places. You got to know punctuation, right? 45-47. It's not a fluke. He didn't put that there for no reason. April the 2nd, 2023, a year and 7 months before this. So if you want peace, if you want comfort, if you want solace, if you want a sound mind, if you want clarity, if you want whatever it is that's positive, you want to find people like me. Guess what? There ain't many. It just ain't. But you got to stop following all these other people over there. The people who follow me and then you following all these others, it's not doing you any good. So you have to choose. You have to choose. Because clickbait don't get you anywhere. And there's too many of them out there. They're just misleading people right on down the pipe. So guess what I'm doing? I'm ending under 2 hours. Woo, record time. But, you know, I've got podcasts this week. And been celebrating some birthdays this week with some special people, and so it's great to be able to do that. You know, if I can live life, you can. That's another thing to keep in mind. If I'm living life, you can too. If I'm at peace, comfort, joy, you can too. I told my mother 9 years ago, 10 years ago, I said, when I get scared, you can get scared. I'm not scared. There's no reason to be scared. And again, anybody who is like, doomsdaying it with you right now, any podcaster who is like doomsday mode, they have no clue what's going on. And I did make a joke on a post earlier that if you want to piss on my grave, I'll be at Arlington National Cemetery. So what I'm basically also saying is, if you don't like me, I don't care. I'm serving God. Serving God's mission. He called me here. I'm honoring that. And if I ended with one follower, guess what? That's the way God intended it. But I can tell you right now, all these other people, they ain't got your best interest. The ones on mainstream, like your blue badges and some of these red badges, they have no clue what's going on, lawfully. And the only way we're going to keep the swamp drained is for every American to empower yourself with laws and orders, whether we're in an occupation or not, peacetime or not. There ain't going to be no wars anytime soon, but empower yourself. Empower yourself. Don't let these people control your emotions. All right? Now, if you've ever taken me the wrong way, if you're a follower, but if you've ever taken me the wrong way, always know that my way is to fire you up, to energize you, to pump you up. You know, remember the pep rallies at high school where they pep you up, even though if your team got their butt whooped on Friday, they ran out of the paper thinking they had a chance, right? You don't want to, tell your boys, hey, there's no chance. That team across there is about to tear y'all to pieces. You have no chance. What kind of coaching is that? That's exactly what podcasters are doing when they're Debbie Downers, negative Nancy's, propaganda, drama, all right? Also, propaganda is the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948. So they're doing the very thing that they can't stand Obama for. They're doing the same thing, right? So why would you want that? Why do you want that in your life? You should want someone who fires you up, motivates you, right? Lights a little fire under your rear end, makes you want to tear through a brick wall, makes you want to tear through some paper and go, we're gonna take you out, we're gonna get you. Even if you get your butt whooped, it doesn't matter. If your spirit was there, that's all that matters. Like if your heart was there and your spirit was there, that's what you want. All right, so that's what I do. It's teaching you, educating you, but also firing you up, lifting you up, motivating you. I don't trash veterans either. I love my veterans. I'm a veteran, but I motivate veterans. I'm like, you of all people, you, my brothers, my sisters in arms, you of all people should want to know what's in laws and orders. You should want to know exactly what you raised your right hand for. You should want to know Title 10 and Title 32. You should want to know everything that President Trump's working with in vote, in action. You should want to know that. It separates everything, but it also does what? It validates your service. It vindicates your service. It validates you as a person. It does all those things. And this is not only historical monumental, but it's biblical. This is a lot bigger. So, boy. Ooh, the future. Oh. I mean, I do. I'm like, ooh, I may go ride a dirt road tonight. I'm so pumped up about it's rolling out. And everything's been in the documents for almost, I typed them a long time ago, but they've been in there published visually for 5 years. Right at 5 years, 4.5 years published for friends and family. And then the books, The Midnight Rider Rides Again, like it's all there. It's there. And it's ahead of all this. And you're not going to have to wait till I don't know what the average audience is for me, but you're not going to be 90 years old seeing this unless you're 89, all right? Or 88. But if you're 88 on Instagram, hats off to you. You're hip and cool. All right, so all these people out there, you got to remember President Trump as well. He's 79 years old. What would be the point of waiting until he's 95 to exonerate him? Come on, people. Do some thinking here. All right, the man would deserve to do what? Live in a little bit of peace, whole peace, not half peace. And he can't. I mean, if he quit today, which that's not going to happen, but this is just a hypothetical. If he quit today, shoot, look at all the people who jumped ship on him last week and a week before. So it wouldn't be a true half support him. It would be a Flint there going, here's a little portion over here who jumped ship, so they might as well put them with the liberals over here because they look like them. Do you want to look like a liberal? Maybe I should title that video this. Do you want to look like a liberal? I don't think you do. So if you don't want to look like a liberal, what do you need to do? Trust the man, but you can't trust the man without what? Trusting the plan. You can't trust the plan without what? Knowing the plan. So therefore, that means you got to do what? You got to go read the laws and orders currently in vogue right now that outline a strategic and special operation.